The SS Orpheus fell through Xanthea's atmosphere like a meteor, trailing fire and smoke. Inside the ship's command center, alarm systems blared as warning lights bathed the crew in flashes of crimson. "Can you stabilize it, Wainwright?" Commander Leland Graves shouted over the cacophony of alerts. Chief Engineer Tomas Wainwright's fingers danced across the control panel. Sweat dripped from his brow as he fought to maintain control of the rapidly descending vessel. "Trying, sir. Primary thrusters are offline. Switching to emergency landing protocols." The ship jolted violently, sending several crew members tumbling across the floor. Dr. Miranda Cole gripped her console with white knuckles, watching through the viewport as the strange landscape of Xanthea grew closer by the second. The planet's surface was a tapestry of bioluminescent forest, trees with glowing veins that pulsed like heartbeats, fields of grass that shimmered with an ethereal blue light. "Brace for impact," Graves commanded. The SS Orpheus crashed through the canopy of massive trees before skidding across a clearing, carving a deep furrow in the alien soil. When the ship finally came to rest, an eerie silence fell over the command center, punctuated only by the hiss of damaged systems and the groans of the crew. Miranda unstrapped herself and immediately began checking on the injured. As the expedition's lead biologist, her medical training made her the default first responder. "Status report," she called out, applying pressure to a laceration on a young technician's forehead. "Hull integrity at 63%, reported Wainwright, coughing through the smoke. "Life support systems operational, but we've sustained significant damage to the propulsion system. We're not flying out of here anytime soon." Commander Graves pulled himself to his feet, his military bearing reasserting itself despite the chaos. "Security team, establish a perimeter. Wainwright, begin damage assessment and repairs. Dr. Cole, tend to the wounded and prepare an environmental assessment. We need to know what we're dealing with out there." Miranda nodded, though her attention was already drawn to the viewport. The forest beyond the ship's hull was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. Plants that seemed to react to their presence, shifting and swaying despite the absence of wind. Most striking were the patterns of bioluminescence that rippled through the foliage, almost as if the plant life were communicating. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she whispered to no one in particular. "It's unknown territory," Graves countered, having overheard her. "An unknown means dangerous until proven otherwise." Miranda had worked with Graves on 2 previous expeditions. He was competent and decisive, but his military background often made him see threats where she saw wonders. They had clashed before over their different approaches, her scientific curiosity versus his security-first mentality. "With all due respect, Commander," she replied, "that unknown territory might hold the resources we need to repair the ship. The sooner I can analyze the local biology, the sooner we can determine what might be useful." Graves considered this, then gave a curt nod. "Take Wilson and Martinez. Stay within visual range of the ship and maintain constant communication." As the day progressed, Miranda led her small team on a careful exploration of the area immediately surrounding the crash site. The forest of Xanthea was a biologist's dream and nightmare. Every sample they collected revealed biological structures that defied Earth-based classification. The plants contained cellular structures that could communicate across distances, sharing resources and information through a network reminiscent of neural pathways. It's as if the entire forest is a single, interconnected organism, Miranda told her team, examining a leaf fragment under her portable microscope. The leaf cells pulsed with light in response to her touch. "These bioluminescent patterns aren't random. They're signals." Sergeant Wilson, one of the security personnel assigned to her team, kept his hand on his sidearm. "Signals to what, Doctor?" Before Miranda could answer, Martinez called from several meters away. "Dr. Cole, you need to see this." They gathered around a large, moss-covered stone. Etched into its surface were intricate symbols that glowed faintly with the same bioluminescence as the surrounding plants. The markings were clearly deliberate, organized in patterns that suggested language or symbolism. "These aren't natural formations," Miranda breathed. running her fingers lightly over the engravings. These are created by intelligence. Wilson shifted uncomfortably. Are you saying there's something sentient on this planet? I'm saying we should proceed with caution and respect, Miranda replied. She took several images of the markings, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. These symbols could be ancient, or they could be recent. Either way, we're guests here. As they continued their survey, Miranda noticed small creatures darting between the trees, no larger than squirrels, but with 6 limbs and translucent skin that revealed complex internal organs. They seemed curious about the humans, but maintained their distance. Let's collect one for study, Wilson suggested, raising his weapon. Absolutely not, Miranda said firmly. We observe only at this stage. No interference with the local fauna. Wilson reluctantly lowered his weapon, but his expression suggested he thought Miranda was being overly cautious. The team returned to the ship as Xanthia's strange twilight descended, the bioluminescence of the forest intensifying as the planet's sun dipped below the horizon, creating a dreamlike landscape of blue and green light. Back at the SS Orpheus, they found Commander Graves organizing teams and prioritizing repairs. Chief Engineer Wainwright had a grim assessment. We need a specific type of crystalline mineral to replace the damaged components in our propulsion system, he explained, pointing to schematics on his tablet. Initial scans suggest similar compounds might exist in those rock formations about 2 kilometers east of US. We'll organize an expedition at first light, Graves decided. Until then, everyone stays on high alert. We don't know what comes out in the dark on this planet. That night, as most of the crew attempted to rest, Miranda found herself unable to sleep. The symbols on the stone haunted her thoughts. She felt certain they were missing something important about this world, something that could mean the difference between successful repairs and disaster. She was reviewing her notes when Private Jenkins burst into the medical bay, his face pale with shock. Dr. Cole, Commander Graves needs you immediately. Kowalski's gone missing. Miranda rushed to the command center, where she found Graves reviewing security footage with a grim expression. Kowalski went out to check something he saw moving near the perimeter, Graves explained, his voice tight with controlled anger. The cameras show him approaching the tree line, then nothing. He never returned. Did you see what caught his attention? Miranda asked. Graves shook his head. Just shadows. I've assembled a search team. We move out in 5 minutes. Commander, wait, Miranda urged. We should consider our approach carefully. This planet has an established ecosystem with possible intelligent inhabitants. Storming into the forest armed for combat might send the wrong message. One of my men is missing. Doctor, Graves replied coldly. This isn't a scientific conference. This is a rescue mission. Miranda recognized the determination in his eyes and knew further argument would be futile. Then I'm coming with you. If there are sentient beings out there, we may need to communicate with them. The search party moved cautiously into the forest, their path illuminated by the natural glow of the vegetation. Miranda noticed that the bioluminescent patterns seemed to shift in response to their presence, rippling ahead of them like a silent alarm system. They found Kowalski's footprints leading deeper into the woods, but then the trail changed. There were signs of struggle, broken undergrowth, scuff marks in the soil, and most disturbing, drag marks leading away from the scene. Spread out, Graves ordered his team. Standard search formation. Weapons ready. As they followed the trail, Miranda noticed more of the glyph-covered stones, their markings glowing more intensely than before. She also spotted the small creatures they had seen earlier, now watching from the branches with what seemed like purposeful attention. The trail led them to a clearing where the drag marks abruptly ended. There was no sign of Kowalski, no blood, no equipment, nothing to indicate what had happened to him. Sergeant Wilson suddenly fired his weapon into the underbrush. The blast shattered the night's silence, and the forest's bioluminescence flared in response, as if in pain. Contact! Wilson shouted, continuing to fire at a shadow moving with impossible speed between the trees. Cease fire! Miranda yelled, but it was too late. The damage was done. In the brief illumination from Wilson's weapon, Miranda caught a glimpse of what he had shot at, a tall, slender figure with skin that bore the same glowing patterns as the forest itself. It moved with fluid grace, seeming to meld with the shadows before disappearing entirely. A terrible stillness descended on the forest. The bioluminescence dimmed to almost nothing, plunging them into darkness. What the hell was that? Graves demanded, his flashlight cutting through the sudden gloom. Miranda felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I think we've just met the dominant species of Xanthea, she said quietly. And I think Sergeant Wilson may have just declared war on them. The words formed in her mind with terrible clarity. Congratulations, you just declared war on the wrong species. They retreated to the ship, the forest now eerily silent around them. The bioluminescence that had been so vibrant before was now subdued, as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. Back at the Isis Orpheus, Graves immediately ordered enhanced security measures, motion sensors, automated defense turrets, and round-the-clock armed patrols. We're dealing with hostiles, he announced to the assembled crew. They've taken one of our own, and they're clearly territorial. Our priority remains repairing the ship and getting off this planet, but now we do it with combat protocols in effect. Miranda listened with growing concern. She understood Graves' military mindset. In the face of an unknown threat, prepare for the worst. But everything she had observed suggested that the inhabitants of this world, the beings she had mentally began calling the Ariare, had a profound connection to their environment. A militaristic approach could escalate an already volatile situation. Commander, she spoke up, I urge caution. What we witnessed wasn't necessarily aggression. For all we know, Kowalski may have inadvertently violated some cultural taboo or sacred space. We should attempt communication before we commit to hostilities. Communication? Graviskoft. And how exactly do you propose to communicate with shadows that kidnap my personnel? The symbols, Miranda insisted. The glyphs we found throughout the forest. They're a form of language or record-keeping. If we could decipher them, we might understand what we're dealing with. Wainwright, who had remained silent through most of the discussion, finally spoke. Whether they're hostile or not, we still need those mineral crystals to repair the ship. We can't just sit here waiting to be picked off one by one. Graves nodded. Tomorrow, we mount an expedition to the eastern formations. Heavy security detail. Dr. Cole, you'll accompany us to identify the minerals we need. Everyone else stays with the ship. Dismissed. As the crew dispersed, Miranda approached Wainwright. Tomas, I need your help. Can you build me something that can record and analyze light patterns? I think the bioluminescence is key to understanding the Ariare. The engineer considered for a moment, then nodded. I can modify one of our spectral analyzers. It won't be perfect, but it should capture the wavelength variations. Thank you, Miranda said, grateful for his cooperation. I believe there's more to this world than we're seeing. The forest itself reacts to our presence. It's as if the entire ecosystem is a communications network. Wainwright gave her a weary smile. Just be careful, Miranda. Graves isn't wrong about everything. We are in danger here. That night, Miranda experienced vivid dreams unlike any she'd had before. She saw the forest from above, a vast network of light that pulsed with information. She heard whispers in a language she couldn't understand but somehow felt familiar. Most disturbing were the flashes of memory that didn't belong to her. Memories of previous human visitors to Xanthea, of violence and exploitation, of trust betrayed. She awoke with a start, her heart racing. The dreams had felt too real, too coherent to be dismissed as mere stress-induced fantasies. Could the Ariare be attempting to communicate with her through some form of telepathy? The morning brought no clarity, only a growing sense of foreboding as they prepared for the expedition to the eastern formations. The forest seemed different now, the vibrant colors muted, the air thick with tension. Their journey through the woods was marked by frequent stops as Miranda documented changes in the environment. The bioluminescent patterns were shifting more rapidly now, creating complex sequences that her modified analyzer recorded but couldn't yet interpret. It's like they're watching us, Martinez muttered as they moved deeper into unfamiliar territory. Miranda nodded. They are. The forest itself is their sensory network. Every step we take is being monitored and communicated. Graves, walking point with his weapon ready, looked back at her. If that's true, then they know exactly where we're going. Perfect setup for an ambush. Or they're simply curious, Miranda countered. Not everything different is dangerous, Commander. They reached the crystalline formations by midday, towering structures that resembled Earth stalagmites, but composed of a translucent material that refracted the sunlight into prismatic patterns. Wainwright's scans confirmed they contained the mineral compounds needed for the ship's repairs. We'll need to extract several larger pieces, he explained, examining the formations with evident relief. The crystalline structure is perfect, better than what we normally use, actually. As they began carefully removing samples, Miranda noticed movement at the edge of her vision, the now familiar shadow figures, observing from a distance. She tried to appear non-threatening, focusing on documenting the crystals rather than acknowledging their watchers. The confrontation, when it came, was sudden and chaotic. One of the security team, nervous from the constant sensation of being watched, fired at a moving shadow. The response was immediate. The forest around them erupted with activity as several Ariare emerged from concealment. They were humanoid, but clearly alien, tall, slender beings with skin that bore intricate patterns of bioluminescence. Their movements were fluid and coordinated, suggesting training or natural predatory skill. Most carried no visible weapons, but some wielded staff-like implements that pulsed with energy. "Hold fire!" Miranda shouted as Graves and his team raised their weapons. The Ariare attacked with precision, disabling rather than killing. 2 security officers went down immediately, their weapons somehow deactivated by proximity to the alien staffs. Graves fired a burst that caught one Ariare in the shoulder, causing it to retreat with a haunting melodic cry that seemed to resonate through the entire forest. The skirmish lasted only minutes before the Ariare withdrew, taking with them the injured security personnel and most of the crystal samples. They moved like ghosts between the trees, their forms seeming to merge with the forest itself. "Back to the ship. Now," Graves ordered, helping a wounded Martinez to his feet. They retreated in disarray, the forest actively hindering their progress now. Vines that hadn't been there before blocked paths, roots seemed to rise from the ground to trip them, and the bioluminescence dimmed to near darkness despite the daylight above the canopy. When they finally reached the SS Orpheus, they found the rest of the crew in a state of agitation. During their absence, strange phenomena had manifested around the ship. Lights in the forest that formed complex patterns, sounds that seemed to bypass the ears and resonate directly in the mind, and most alarmingly, several crew members reporting vivid hallucinations. "They're in our heads somehow," Wainwright explained, his normally practical demeanor shaken. "People are seeing things, memories they've forgotten, nightmares they've never shared." Graves called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. "We're under attack," he declared, his voice hard with determination. "These creatures, these Ariare, as Dr. Cole calls them, are using some form of psychological warfare. We need to respond decisively." "What are you proposing?" Miranda asked, dreading his answer. "A preemptive strike," Graves replied. "We clear a perimeter around the ship, eliminate any immediate threats, and establish a defensive position while Wainwright completes repairs with the crystals we managed to save." Miranda stood in protest. "That's madness. We're talking about a species with capabilities we barely understand, with a connection to this planet that goes beyond anything we've encountered before. A military solution will only escalate the situation." "The situation is already escalated, Dr." Graves snapped. "4 of my people are missing, and the rest are being psychologically tortured. What's your scientific solution to that?" Miranda took a deep breath. "Let me try to communicate with them. The dreams, the hallucinations, their attempts at contact. Clumsy, perhaps, because our minds are so different but deliberate. They're trying to understand us as much as we're trying to understand them. Too risky," Graves dismissed her. I'm not sending anyone else out there to be captured. I'll go alone, Miranda insisted. No weapons, no backup. Just me and my analyzer. If I'm not back in 24 hours, proceed with your plan. A heavy silence fell over the room as Graves considered her proposal. Finally, he gave a reluctant nod. 24 hours, Doctor. Then we do things my way. As Miranda prepared to venture into the forest, she reviewed everything they had learned about the ARA, their connection to the planet's ecosystem, their apparent ability to influence minds, their coordinated tactics without verbal communication. All suggested a civilization fundamentally different from humanity's, but no less advanced. She left the ship at dawn, carrying only scientific equipment and food rations. The forest received her with an eerie quiet, the bioluminescence responding to her presence with pulsing patterns that her analyzer recorded continuously. Miranda followed the most intense concentrations of light, reasoning that they might lead to significant locations. The patterns guided her deeper into the forest, past landmarks she recognized from previous excursions, and into territory they had not yet explored. By midday, she reached a massive clearing dominated by an ancient tree unlike any she had seen before. Its trunk was wider than the SS Orpheus, its branches creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns. Most remarkable was the concentration of bioluminescence around its base. Intricate symbols carved into the bark and soil, all pulsing in synchronized rhythms. A meeting place, Miranda murmured to herself. Or a temple. She approached cautiously, analyzer recording everything. As she neared the great tree, the forest fell completely silent. Even the small creatures that had been her constant companions throughout the journey disappeared into hiding. A figure stepped out from behind the massive trunk, taller than the others she had seen, with patterns of light that seemed more complex, more vibrant. This was clearly an individual of importance among the ARA. Miranda stopped, lowering her equipment to show she carried no weapons. I come in peace, she said, knowing the words themselves were meaningless, but hoping her tone and body language would convey her intent. The ARA, she would later learn this was Shahar, an elder and keeper of their ancestral memories, approached with deliberate steps. When it was less than an arm's length away, it raised a hand toward her face. Miranda suppressed her instinct to retreat and remained still, allowing the contact. The moment Shahar's fingers touched her temple, her consciousness expanded in a rush of sensory information. She was no longer just Miranda Cole, standing in a forest. She was simultaneously experiencing the entire ecosystem of Xanthia through countless perspectives. She felt the roots of the great tree extending deep into the planet's crust, drawing up nutrients and information. She perceived the forest as a vast neural network, every plant and creature connected in a symbiotic relationship that spanned the entire continent. Most overwhelming were the memories, not just her own, but those of Shahar, and, through Shahar, the collective experience of the ARA people. The truth revealed itself in devastating clarity. Humanity had visited Xanthia before, centuries ago. The first contact had been peaceful, exploratory, but subsequent expeditions had turned exploitative. Mining operations that damaged the delicate ecosystem, biological sampling that caused irreparable harm, and eventually deliberate attacks when the ARA attempted to protect their world. Miranda's own memories were laid bare in return. Shahar saw her work on a classified military project years ago, research on weaponizing alien biological compounds that had resulted in the devastation of microbial life on a distant moon. A project she had abandoned in disgust, but too late to prevent the damage. The connection broke abruptly as explosions echoed through the forest. Miranda staggered, her mind struggling to reorient itself in a single perspective again. No, she gasped, understanding immediately what was happening. Graves didn't wait. Through the mental link that still partially connected her to the forest awareness, she felt the pain of trees being destroyed, the panic of creatures fleeing the attack, and the focused anger of the ARA as they mobilized to defend their home. Shahar's expression, though alien in its features, conveyed profound disappointment. It pointed to Miranda, then to the direction of the distant explosions, a clear question. Did you know? No, Miranda said emphatically, shaking her head for emphasis. I didn't know he would do this. I came to understand, to find peace. She didn't know if Shahar comprehended her words, but through their lingering mental connection, she projected images of cooperation, of humans and Ariare communicating, of the SS Orpheus leaving Xanthia without further damage. Shahar considered for a long moment, then placed both hands on the trunk of the great tree. The bioluminescence throughout the forest intensified, patterns shifting in complex sequences that Miranda's analyzer recorded but couldn't interpret. The response from the forest was immediate and terrifying. The ground began to tremble as root systems shifted beneath the soil. The air filled with spores that made breathing difficult. Most alarming were the waves of neural disruption that Miranda could feel approaching the area where Graves and his team were attacking. Psychic pulses that would induce hallucinations, disorientation, and eventually unconsciousness. Congratulations, you just declared war on the wrong species. The thought formed in Miranda's mind, though whether it originated from Shahar, from her own consciousness, or from the collective awareness of Xanthia itself, she couldn't tell. She needed to stop Graves before the Ariare were forced to escalate further. Please, she said to Shahar, gesturing toward the direction of the conflict. Let me try to stop them. Let me prevent more bloodshed. Shahar made a gesture that seemed to grant permission. Two other Ariare appeared from the forest and flanked Miranda, clearly intended as escorts or guards. They moved through the forest with incredible speed, the undergrowth parting before them as if the plants themselves were facilitating their passage. As they neared the conflict zone, the signs of destruction became evident: scorched vegetation, shattered crystal formations, the bodies of small forest creatures caught in the crossfire. They found Graves and his team surrounded, outmaneuvered by Ariare, who used the forest itself as a weapon. Several humans lay unconscious, affected by the neural disruptions. Others fired desperately at shadows that moved too quickly to track. Graves, Miranda shouted, breaking through the underbrush with her Ariare escorts. Stand down. For God's sake, stand down. The commander turned, his expression shifting from determination to confusion to anger when he saw Miranda accompanied by the very beings he was fighting. Cole, what the hell is this? Are you collaborating with them now? I'm trying to save what's left of our crew, Miranda retorted. This fight is over. We've lost. The Ariare could have killed everyone already if they wanted to. As if to emphasize her point, more Ariare emerged from the forest, surrounding the remaining human fighters. They carried no visible weapons, but the forest around them pulsed with deadly potential. Vines that could strangle, spores that could suffocate, neural signals that could incapacitate. Graves assessed the situation with the calculating eye of a veteran soldier. His shoulders slumped slightly as he recognized the tactical reality. Everyone, cease fire, he ordered. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the groans of the injured and the subtle whisper of the forest. What now, Doctor? Graves asked, his voice bitter with defeat. Do your new friends intend to finish us off, or do they have something worse in mind? Miranda turned to Shahar, who had joined them silently. The mental connection between them had faded to a whisper, but she could still sense the elder's intent. They want us to leave, she translated. They're willing to let us repair our ship and go, on the condition that we never return. And our missing personnel? Miranda closed her eyes briefly, receiving the confirmation of what she already suspected. They're alive, but they've been studied. The Ariare were trying to understand us through them. They'll be returned, but they may be changed. Graves looked like he wanted to argue, to demand immediate and unconditional release, but the reality of their situation was undeniable. They were stranded on a world where the entire ecosystem could be weaponized against them, facing a species with capabilities they barely comprehended. Fine, he finally agreed. We repair and we leave. But I want my people back before we go. The return to the SS Orpheus was a somber procession. The injured were carried by those still able to walk, with Ariare flanking the group like silent sentinels. The forest, which had been actively hostile during the conflict, now seemed merely watchful, the bioluminescence tracking their movement but not impeding it. At the ship, they found the rest of the crew in various states of distress. The neural disruptions had affected everyone to some degree, leaving them disoriented and anxious. Wainwright had managed to maintain focus on the repairs, but his progress had been slowed by the psychological interference. "I need those crystals," he told Miranda when she found him working feverishly in the engine room. "The ones we collected weren't enough, and after what happened." He gestured vaguely toward the forest visible through a viewport. "I'll speak with them," Miranda promised. To her surprise, the Ariare proved accommodating once hostilities ceased. Through a combination of her analyzer's recordings and the partial mental link she still shared with Shahar, Miranda established a rudimentary form of communication. She explained their needs, emphasizing that they sought only what was necessary to leave the planet. Shahar conferred with other Ariare leaders in a silent communion that involved complex patterns of light flowing between them. Eventually, they agreed to provide the necessary crystals, not from the sacred formations that Graves' team had attempted to mine, but from another location where the extraction would cause minimal disruption. Wainwright worked tirelessly, integrating the alien crystals into the ship's systems with ingenious adaptations. "These are remarkable," he told Miranda as they tested a repaired power coupling. "More efficient than anything we've used before. If we could bring these back to Alliance space." "That's not part of the deal," Miranda reminded him gently. "We take only what we need to leave. Nothing more." Days passed in an uneasy truce. The missing personnel were returned as promised, physically unharmed but changed in subtle ways. They spoke of visions, of experiencing life from perspectives not their own, of understanding the forest as a vast, interconnected mind. Some seemed traumatized by the experience. Others displayed a strange serenity, as if they had glimpsed something profound beyond human comprehension. Graves maintained his military discipline, but grew increasingly withdrawn. The defeat weighed on him. Not just the tactical failure, but the realization that his approach had nearly doomed them all. Miranda found him one evening staring at the forest through the ship's main viewport. "They could have killed us at any time, couldn't they?" he asked without turning. Miranda nodded, though he couldn't see the gesture. "From the moment we crashed, they were studying us, trying to determine our intentions. And we failed the test." "Not entirely," Miranda corrected him. "We're still alive. They're still willing to let us leave. That's more mercy than humanity has shown to other species in similar situations." Graves finally turned to face her, his expression haunted. "You saw it, didn't you? When you connected with their leader. You saw what we've done here before." Miranda nodded again. "Centuries ago. Different expedition, different people, but the same arrogance. The belief that we had the right to take whatever we wanted, regardless of who or what was already here. Will they report this to the Alliance? When we get back, will they tell Command about what happened?" The question carried the weight of career-ending consequences, but Miranda heard the deeper concern beneath it. They're more worried about what Command might do in response. Whether they might send more ships, better armed, and with explicit orders to subjugate. Graves nodded slowly, understanding the implication. Whatever report they filed would need to discourage further interest in Xanthea without revealing the full extent of the Area Ray's capabilities. A delicate balance that could determine whether this encounter ended with their departure or escalated into a broader conflict. As the day of departure approached, Miranda spent increasing time with Shahar, strengthening their tenuous communication and learning what she could about Ariare culture. The more she understood, the more she questioned her place in the human alliance and its expansionist policies. "I could stay," she found herself suggesting during one of their silent communions. The thought had been growing in her mind, the possibility of remaining on Xanthea as an ambassador or simply as a student of this remarkable civilization. Shahar's response was gentle but firm. Images of separation, of time needed for wounds to heal, of future possibilities but not yet. The Ariare needed distance from humanity to recover from this encounter and the historical trauma it had reawakened. On the final day, as the SS Orpheus prepared for launch, Miranda stood at the edge of the clearing with Shahar. No words were spoken aloud, but their mental connection had strengthened enough for basic concepts to flow between them. Trust damaged, but not destroyed. Understanding begun, but incomplete. Separation necessary, but perhaps not permanent. If we return, Miranda asked, forming the thought carefully, generations from now, with different intentions, would we be welcome? Shahar's response was complex, a blend of caution, conditional acceptance, and warning. The Ariare would remember, would watch, would judge actions rather than promises. And they would be prepared. Miranda boarded the ship with a heavy heart, but also with a sense of purpose that had been missing from her life since she abandoned her military research. She would tell the truth about Xanthea. Not the complete truth that might invite exploitation, but enough to ensure the Alliance understood that this was a world to be approached with respect, if approached at all. The SS Orpheus lifted off without ceremony, the repaired systems functioning better than expected thanks to the Ariare crystals. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Miranda watched the bioluminescent forest recede below them, a tapestry of light that seemed to pulse in a final farewell or warning. On the bridge, Graves stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid despite the defeat he was bringing home. "We'll have to report to command when we reach communications range," he said quietly. "They'll want explanations." "Let me handle that," Miranda offered. "I'll take responsibility for the contact protocols." Graves gave her a sidelong glance. "They won't be satisfied with scientific papers and cultural observations, Doctor. They'll want to know about the Ariare's capabilities, their weaknesses, their technology. What they'll get is my professional assessment that Xanthea is unsuitable for colonization or resource extraction," Miranda replied firmly. "Hostile environment, minimal valuable resources, indigenous population at pre-technological development levels. That's not exactly the truth. It's the truth that serves peace." Miranda met his gaze steadily. "Unless you'd prefer to, tell command that we encountered a species that could turn an entire planet against us and nearly wiped out your security team without conventional weapons." After a long moment, Graves nodded. "Your report. My endorsement." As the ship accelerated into the blackness of space, leaving Xanthea's star behind, Miranda thought of Shahar's final warning. The implicit understanding that if humanity returned with conquest in mind, the welcome would be very different. "Congratulations, you just declared war on the wrong species," she whispered to herself, not as a fear, but as a reminder of the responsibility she now carried. To ensure that next time, if there was a next time, humanity would come in peace or not at all.